The morning rain hammered against the subway windows as Emma Rodriguez clutched her portfolio bag against her chest. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark glass, showing a young woman with determined brown eyes and hair pulled into a neat bun. Today was the day everything would change. Today she would walk into Sterling Enterprises as their new executive assistant. The train lurched suddenly as it pulled into the station. Emma stood, adjusting her blazer and smoothing down her skirt. She stepped toward the doors, her mind racing through everything she needed to remember. First impression, professional demeanor, confidence without arrogance. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory, telling her she could do this, that she was meant for more than struggling paycheck to paycheck. The doors began to close. Emma rushed forward, her foot catching in the gap. She pulled hard, stumbling onto the platform as the train moved away. Relief flooded through her for exactly 3 seconds before she looked down. Her black pump was gone, wedged somewhere in the door mechanism and now disappearing into the tunnel. Emma stood frozen on the platform, staring at her one remaining shoe. Commuters flowed around her like water around a stone. She checked her phone. 20 minutes until her start time. The next train would make her late. Walking would make her even later. She could feel panic rising in her throat, threatening to choke her. She slipped off the remaining shoe and held it in her hand. Wearing one shoe seemed more ridiculous than wearing none at all. Her bare feet touched the cold concrete of the subway platform, and she made a decision. Late was unacceptable. Barefoot was merely unfortunate. She would explain, apologize, and prove through her work that this morning's disaster meant nothing about her capabilities. The streets of Manhattan were unforgiving in October. Emma walked quickly, her feet already aching from the cold pavement. Sterling Enterprises occupied a gleaming tower of glass and steel in the heart of the financial district. The building seemed to pierce the gray sky, a monument to success and ambition. Emma paused outside, looking up at the structure that represented everything she was fighting for. Her mother's medical bills were drowning them both. This job was their lifeline. She pushed through the revolving doors into a lobby that took her breath away. Marble floors stretched in every direction, polished to a mirror shine. A chandelier hung from the ceiling like captured starlight. Everyone moved with purpose, dressed in designer suits and carrying briefcases that probably cost more than her rent. And there she was, barefoot on floors that cost more per square foot than everything she owned. A security guard noticed her feet, his eyes widening before he looked away quickly. Emma approached the reception desk where a woman with perfect silver hair and immaculate makeup watched her approach with carefully controlled surprise. "Good morning," Emma said, forcing her voice to stay steady. "I'm Emma Rodriguez. First day, executive assistant position." The receptionist typed something into her computer, her expression never changing though her eyes kept drifting downward. 45th floor. "Ms. Patricia is expecting you." "Thank you." Emma moved toward the elevators, acutely aware of every eye that followed her path across the lobby. She pressed the button and waited, trying to ignore the curious glances from other people waiting. The elevator arrived empty. Emma stepped inside and pressed the button for the 45th floor, releasing a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The doors started to slide closed. "Hold that, please." The voice was deep, authoritative but not unkind. Emma jabbed the door button and they reopened. A man stepped inside, and Emma knew immediately who he was. Jonathan Sterling's face had been on the cover of Forbes magazine last month. She had studied every article about him during her interview preparation. But photographs had not captured the presence of the man himself. He was tall, probably 6'2", with dark hair touched with distinguished gray at the temples. His suit was charcoal, perfectly tailored, and his eyes were a striking blue that seemed to see everything. He stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the 45th floor. Already illuminated. His gaze dropped briefly to her bare feet. Emma felt heat crawl up her neck, burning across her cheeks. The silence stretched between them, heavy and uncomfortable. "Rough morning," she said finally, unable to bear the quiet any longer. "The subway took my shoes hostage." Jonathan's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in those blue eyes. "The city has a way of testing us when we least expect it." "I was prepared," Emma said, lifting her chin slightly. "The universe just had other plans." "And yet you came anyway." It was not a question. The words carried weight, acknowledgement of something he saw in her determination. "First day," Emma said simply. Missing it because of footwear seemed like a poor excuse. The elevator climbed steadily, the numbers changing with agonizing slowness. Emma could feel his attention on her, not staring but observing. There was a difference. "Executive assistant position," Jonathan said suddenly. "How did you know?" 45th floor only has 3 departments, and you have the look of someone about to start something important." Emma turned to face him fully. "What look is that?" "Determined." "Nervous." "Trying very hard to appear neither." The corner of his mouth lifted slightly, not quite a smile but close. "I recognize it because I wore it myself once." The elevator dinged for the 40th floor, then continued upward. "Do you work on 45? Emma asked. "Something like that." The doors opened at their floor. Jonathan gestured for her to exit first. Emma stepped out onto carpet so plush it felt like walking on clouds after the cold concrete of the streets. The hallway stretched in both directions, all glass walls and modern art. She turned to thank him, but he was already walking in the same direction she needed to go. "Which department are you in?" The question came out smaller than she intended. Jonathan stopped at a massive office at the end of the hall. The nameplate on the door caught the light: Jonathan Sterling, Chief Executive Officer. Emma's heart dropped into her stomach. "You're Jonathan Sterling," she said, the words barely above a whisper. He extended his hand. "And you're Emma Rodriguez. I read your application 3 times. Emma shook his hand, his grip warm and firm. "3 times? The first 2 times I thought there was an error. Nobody works 3 jobs while caring for a sick parent and still maintains perfect references from every employer. It seemed impossible." "I don't have the luxury of possible or impossible," Emma said quietly. "I only have necessary." Something shifted in his expression then, a softening around his eyes. "Patricia," he called, and an older woman appeared from a nearby office. "This is Ms. Rodriguez. Please get her properly outfitted and show her to her station." Patricia looked at Emma's feet, then at Jonathan, then back to Emma with understanding eyes. "Of course, Mr. Sterling." Jonathan nodded once. "Welcome to Sterling Enterprises, Ms. Rodriguez. I hope the rest of your day is less eventful than your morning." He disappeared into his office, the door closing with a soft click. Patricia smiled warmly. "Well, you certainly made an impression. Come with me, dear. Let's get you some shoes and then I'll show you everything you need to know." As Emma followed Patricia down the hallway, she glanced back at Jonathan's closed door. Through the frosted glass, she could see his silhouette at his desk. Something had passed between them in that elevator, some recognition or understanding she could not quite name. She had come here barefoot and vulnerable, expecting judgment or dismissal. Instead, she had found something unexpected in those blue eyes. Respect. The executive wardrobe room was more luxurious than any store Emma had ever entered. Patricia produced clothes in her exact size, shoes that felt like butter on her aching feet, and asked no questions about the morning's disaster. When Emma emerged 15 minutes later, transformed from barefoot disaster into polished professional, Patricia led her to a desk directly outside Jonathan's office. "Your station," Patricia said, handing her a tablet and security badge. "Mr. Sterling is particular about his schedule. He takes coffee at 7:45, no sugar, very specific temperature. He works through lunch most days." The break room is down that hall. Emma sat in the ergonomic chair that probably cost more than her car and looked at the tablet screen showing Jonathan's schedule. It was packed from 7 in the morning until 8 at night, every moment accounted for. Through the frosted glass of his office, she could see him on the phone, one hand running through his hair in what looked like frustration. The intercom on her desk buzzed. "Ms. Rodriguez. Coffee, please. Then bring me the Whitmore file and the quarterly projections." His voice was all business now, no warmth from the elevator. "Yes, sir." Emma stood on steady feet in shoes that fit perfectly and walked toward the break room. Her first task was coffee for a billionaire who had seen her at her absolute worst and hired her anyway. The morning had started with disaster, losing her shoes and her dignity on a subway platform. But standing in this gleaming hallway, wearing clothes that made her feel capable, working for a man who had called her determined and nervous and recognized those qualities because he had once felt them himself, Emma felt something she had not felt in months. Hope. The afternoon passed in a blur of learning systems, memorizing preferences, and trying to anticipate needs before they were voiced. Jonathan was demanding but never cruel, specific but never impossible. He noticed everything, commenting rarely but observing constantly. Emma found herself acutely aware of his presence even through the frosted glass wall, the way he moved through his office, the tone of his voice during phone calls that told her whether meetings were going well or poorly. At 6 o'clock, Patricia stopped by her desk. "Most people leave around now. Mr. Sterling usually stays until 9 or 10. "Then I'll stay too," Emma said. Patricia smiled knowingly. "He's a good man, Emma. Brilliant businessman, but a good man underneath it all. Don't let the reputation fool you." She patted Emma's shoulder and left. At 7:30, the office was nearly empty. Emma was reviewing files for tomorrow's meetings when Jonathan's door opened. He stood in the doorway, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. He looked tired. "You're still here," he observed. "You're still working," Emma replied. "I assumed you might need something. I assumed you would have left hours ago. Your first day, after your morning, most people would have gone home." Emma saved her work and looked up at him. "I'm not most people, Mr. Sterling." "No," he said quietly. "I'm beginning to realize that." He seemed about to say something else, then stopped himself. "Go home, Emma. Get some rest. Tomorrow starts early." "Yes, sir." Emma gathered her things, the new shoes, the security badge, the tablet. As she walked past him toward the elevators, she caught a trace of his cologne, something expensive and subtle. "Emma," he called as she reached the elevator. She turned back. He was still standing in his doorway, silhouetted by the light from his office. "Thank you for not giving up. For showing up even when it was hard. That takes courage." The elevator arrived and Emma stepped inside. As the doors closed, she saw Jonathan still watching her, an expression on his face she could not quite read. The elevator descended, carrying her back down to street level where the evening crowds were thick and the city lights were beginning to glow. Emma walked to the subway station on feet that no longer hurt, in shoes that fit perfectly, carrying a bag that contained more than just her old portfolio now. It held possibility. It held hope. And somewhere in the back of her mind, in a place she was not quite ready to examine yet, it held the memory of blue eyes that had looked at her with respect instead of pity, recognition instead of judgment. The barefoot girl had walked through the door. Tomorrow, she would prove she belonged there. 3 weeks passed in a rhythm that Emma came to know by heart. Jonathan took his coffee at 7:45 exactly, reviewed contracts during lunch instead of eating, and stayed until the cleaning crew arrived at 9. She learned that he was fair but exacting, that he noticed when she stayed late but never asked her to, that behind the walls of Chicago's most successful tech CEO was someone who carried burdens he never spoke about. What Emma did not expect was how easily they fell into conversation during those late evenings when the office emptied and the city lights twinkled below like fallen stars. Small talk at first, about work and projects. Then gradually, carefully, something deeper. Jonathan asked about her mother, about the treatments, about how Emma managed everything. And Emma found herself asking about the company he had built from nothing, about what drove him to work 16-hour days when he already had more money than he could spend in 10 lifetimes. It was a Tuesday evening, 3 weeks into her position, when everything began to shift. Emma was organizing files when her phone buzzed. A text from her mother's nurse. "She needs you. Hospital. Now." Emma's hands shook as she read the message again. Her mother had been stable for weeks, the treatments working, the prognosis cautiously optimistic. She grabbed her purse, her keys, her mind already racing through logistics. The hospital was 40 minutes away. Visiting hours ended at 9. She needed to call her night shift job and cancel, which meant losing income they desperately needed. "Emma." Jonathan's voice made her jump. He stood in his doorway, jacket off, looking at her with concern. "What's wrong?" "I have to go. Family emergency." "I'm sorry, I know we have the presentation tomorrow and I haven't finished the graphics, but I'll work on them from the hospital and email them tonight." "Stop." He crossed to her desk in 3 strides. "What happened?" "My mother. The nurse said I need to come. I don't know what's wrong, but they wouldn't call unless it was serious." Emma could hear her own voice rising, panic threading through the words. Jonathan's jaw tightened. He pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. "My driver is downstairs. He'll take you to the hospital. Give me the address." "Mr. Sterling, I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking. I'm telling you." His voice was firm but gentle. "And I'm coming with you. You have meetings tomorrow. The presentation. None of that matters right now." He grabbed his jacket from his office, shrugged it on. "Come on." The drive to the hospital passed in a blur. Jonathan sat beside her in the back of the town car, not speaking, but his presence was solid and grounding. When Emma's hands started shaking, he reached over and covered them with his own, warm and steady. "She's strong," he said quietly. "Like her daughter." The hospital smelled like antiseptic and fear. Emma rushed to the nurse's station, gave her mother's name, followed the directions to the cardiac unit. Her heart pounded against her ribs. Cardiac unit. That was new. That was bad. Her mother, Rosa Rodriguez, lay in a hospital bed looking small and fragile in a way that made Emma's chest ache. Monitors beeped steadily around her. Her eyes were closed, her breathing shallow. "Mama," Emma whispered, taking her hand. Rosa's eyes fluttered open. "Mija, you came." "Of course I came. What happened?" A doctor appeared, clipboard in hand, expression professionally sympathetic. "Ms. Rodriguez, I'm Dr. Williams. Your mother had an episode this evening. Her heart is showing signs of strain from the cancer treatments. We've stabilized her, but we need to discuss next steps." The words washed over Emma like cold water. Heart strain. Complications. Additional treatments. Costs that insurance would not fully cover. She heard numbers that made her vision blur, timelines that felt impossibly short. "I understand," Emma heard herself say from very far away. "Whatever she needs. We'll figure it out." Dr. Williams left. Emma sat in the chair beside her mother's bed, holding Rosa's hand, trying to breathe through the panic. Her mother needed specialized cardiac care on top of the cancer treatments. The numbers the doctor had mentioned were astronomical. Even with her 3 jobs, even with the position at Sterling Enterprises, the math did not work. It would never work. "Emma." Her mother's voice was weak but firm. Don't do this. Don't sacrifice yourself for me. Mama, please don't talk. Save your strength. I'm 62 years old. I've lived a good life. But you, Mija, you're 26. You have your whole future ahead of you. Don't throw it away trying to save someone who's already lived. Stop it. Emma's voice cracked. You're not dying. I won't let you. Rosa smiled sadly. Some things we cannot control, no matter how hard we fight. Emma pressed her mother's hand to her cheek, tears streaming down her face. She had lost her father to a construction accident when she was 12. Her mother was all she had left. The thought of losing her too was unbearable. A soft knock on the door made Emma look up. Jonathan stood in the doorway, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He had given her space, stayed in the waiting room, but now he entered quietly and set 1 cup beside her. Mrs. Rodriguez, he said, extending his hand to Rosa. I'm Jonathan Sterling. I work with your daughter. Rosa's tired eyes sharpened with interest. You're her boss. The one she talks about. Emma felt her face flush. Mama. She says you're brilliant but complicated. That you work too hard and forget to eat lunch. Rosa smiled slightly. Sounds like someone else I know. Jonathan pulled up another chair and sat down. Your daughter is remarkable. Best assistant I've ever had, and I've had many. She gets her strength from her father. He was stubborn too. Refused to quit anything he started. Rosa's eyes drifted closed again, exhaustion pulling at her. Take care of her, Mr. Sterling. She won't take care of herself. I will, Jonathan said quietly. Emma stayed until Rosa fell asleep, then allowed Jonathan to guide her back to the waiting room. She collapsed into one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs, emotionally and physically drained. How much? Jonathan asked. What? How much do you need for her treatment? Emma shook her head. I can't ask you for money. You already helped me get this job. That's more than enough. I'm not offering charity. I'm asking what you need. His blue eyes held hers, intense and unwavering. Tell me. The number fell from her lips before she could stop it. $50,000 for the specialized cardiac care, the additional treatments, the medications not covered by insurance. Saying it out loud made it real, made it impossible. Jonathan pulled out his phone without hesitation. Done. No. Emma stood abruptly. Absolutely not. I won't take your money. It's not charity. It's an advance on your salary. Or a loan. Or a grant from the company wellness fund. I don't care what we call it, but your mother gets the treatment she needs. Why would you do this? Emma's voice broke. You barely know me. Jonathan stood too, closing the distance between them. When he spoke, his voice carried something raw and unguarded. I had a wife once. Catherine. She died 4 years ago. Cancer. We had all the money in the world, every specialist, every treatment. But we caught it too late. I've spent 4 years building an empire bigger than the one I already had, and not a single dollar of it could bring her back. Emma stared at him, seeing grief carved into the lines around his eyes, understanding dawning. Jonathan. You have a chance I didn't have. Your mother's condition is treatable. The doctors are optimistic. I'm not letting you lose her because of money that means nothing to me but everything to you. He reached out and gently wiped a tear from her cheek. Please. Let me help. Emma could not speak. The kindness was too much, too overwhelming. She nodded, and Jonathan pulled her into his arms. She buried her face in his chest and cried, really cried, for the first time since the nurse had called. His arms were strong around her, holding her together while she fell apart. Thank you, she whispered against his shirt. I don't know how to repay you. You already have. You reminded me that money is meaningless unless we use it for what matters. You reminded me what matters. They stayed like that for a long moment, Emma drawing strength from his presence, Jonathan holding her like she was something precious. When Emma finally pulled back, she saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. The walls he maintained so carefully had cracks in them, and through those cracks, she saw vulnerability, loneliness, and something that looked dangerously like longing. "This isn't professional anymore, is it?" she asked softly. "No," Jonathan admitted. "It stopped being professional the moment I saw you walk barefoot into that elevator and refuse to apologize for it." The next days blurred together. Rosa's treatment began immediately, the specialists Jonathan arranged working efficiently. Emma spent her mornings at the hospital, her afternoons at Sterling Enterprises, her evenings back at the hospital. She cancelled her night jobs, and when she tried to explain to Jonathan that she needed to keep working them, he simply increased her salary and told her the discussion was over. But with Rosa's situation stabilizing, a new problem emerged. Richard Preston, Jonathan's business partner and CFO, had noticed the attention Jonathan paid to Emma. Richard was smooth, calculating, and had been with Sterling Enterprises since the beginning. He also believed that Jonathan was making decisions based on emotion rather than business sense. Emma was reviewing contracts in the conference room when she overheard Richard talking to Jonathan in the adjacent office. The walls were not as soundproof as people thought. "You're letting personal feelings cloud your judgment," Richard's voice carried clearly. "The girl shows up barefoot and suddenly she's got special salary considerations, company healthcare extensions for family members, and your personal attention. It looks bad, Jonathan." "Emma is an exceptional employee," Jonathan replied, his voice controlled but tight. "Everything I've provided is within company policy." "Company policy you're bending specifically for her. People are talking. They think you're having an affair with your assistant. It's affecting your credibility." "I don't care what people think." "You should. We have investors, board members, shareholders who expect professionalism. This girl is a distraction you can't afford." Emma felt sick. She gathered her papers quietly and left through the side door before she could hear Jonathan's response. Richard was right. She was a distraction. Her presence was causing problems for Jonathan, problems he did not need. That evening, Emma sat at her desk long after everyone else had gone home. Jonathan emerged from his office at 8:30, looking tired and frustrated. "You heard," he said. "It was not a question. The walls are thin." Jonathan sat on the edge of her desk, something he had never done before. The casual intimacy of it made her heart race. "Richard is concerned about optics. He's not wrong that people are talking. But he is wrong about why I'm helping you." "Why are you helping me?" Emma asked quietly. "Because from the moment I met you, I saw something I had lost. Fire. Determination. The refusal to give up even when everything is stacked against you." He looked at her with those blue eyes that saw too much. "Because you make me want to be better than the man I've become. Because somewhere between coffee orders and late-night conversations, I started caring about you in ways that have nothing to do with business." Emma's breath caught. "Jonathan, I work for you. This is complicated. I know. Believe me, I've told myself all the reasons this is a terrible idea. You're my employee. There's a power imbalance. People will say you're using me or I'm taking advantage. The complications are endless." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch gentle. "But for the first time in 4 years, I feel something other than grief and ambition. I feel alive. And I think maybe you feel it too." Emma could not deny it. The pull between them had been growing since that first elevator ride, building with every late-night conversation, every shared smile, every moment of understanding. "I do," she admitted. "But I'm scared." Scared of losing this job that's saving my mother's life. Scared of what people will say. Scared of not being enough for someone like you. Someone like me? Jonathan smiled sadly. Emma, I'm a workaholic billionaire who forgot how to feel anything real until you walked barefoot into my life and reminded me. You're not the one who's not enough. I am. Before Emma could respond, her phone rang. The hospital. Her heart jumped into her throat as she answered. Jonathan watched her face, his own expression tightening with concern. I understand, Emma said into the phone. I'll be right there. She ended the call, her hands shaking. My mother. There's been another episode. They need me there now. I'm coming with you, Jonathan said immediately. This time, Emma did not argue. They rode to the hospital in tense silence, Emma's hand gripped tightly in Jonathan's. When they arrived, Dr. Williams met them with grave news. Rosa's heart was failing faster than they anticipated. She needed immediate surgery, a risky procedure with no guarantees. Emma signed the consent forms with trembling hands. Rosa was already unconscious, sedated and prepped for surgery. Emma kissed her mother's forehead, whispered that she loved her, and watched as they wheeled her away. The waiting room became a prison. Hours crawled by with agonizing slowness. Jonathan stayed beside her through all of it, bringing terrible coffee, making observations about the outdated magazines, just being present in a way that kept Emma from falling apart completely. Tell me about her, Jonathan said as midnight approached. Your mother. What's she like when she's not sick? Emma smiled through her tears. She's fierce. Worked 3 jobs after my father died to keep us fed and housed. She never complained, never made me feel like we were poor even though we were. She taught me that dignity isn't about what you have, it's about how you carry yourself. She raised an extraordinary daughter. She raised a stubborn one. I get that from both of them. Jonathan's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. I'm glad you're stubborn. Otherwise you might have given up before I had the chance to know you. Is that what this is? You knowing me? I'd like it to be more than that, Jonathan said quietly. When this is over, when your mother is recovering and life settles down, I want to take you to dinner. Not as your boss, as someone who cares about you and wants to see where this leads. That's a date, Emma said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice despite her fear. Yes. Is that okay? Emma looked at their joined hands, at the man who had seen her at her worst and stayed anyway, who had helped her mother without hesitation, who made her feel valued and seen in ways no one ever had. More than okay. They sat in silence after that, hands clasped, waiting together. The surgery took 6 hours. When Dr. Williams finally emerged, still in his surgical scrubs, Emma and Jonathan both stood. She made it through, Dr. Williams said, and Emma's knees nearly buckled with relief. The surgery was successful. She'll need extensive recovery time, but the prognosis is good. Emma sobbed, and Jonathan pulled her close, his own relief evident in the way he held her. They had made it through. Against impossible odds, through complications and crises, they had survived. When Emma was finally allowed to see her mother in recovery, Rosa was awake, weak but smiling. Mija, she whispered. Stop crying. I'm too stubborn to die. Emma laughed through her tears. I know, Mama. You get that from Poppy. Rosa's eyes drifted to where Jonathan stood in the doorway, giving them space but staying close. That one, she said softly. He's a good man. Don't let fear keep you from something real. Mama, rest. We'll talk about this later. No, we'll talk about it now while I have the excuse of medication, to be honest. Rosa squeezed Emma's hand with surprising strength. I've watched you sacrifice everything for me. Your youth, your dreams, your chance at love. The one thing you never gave yourself was permission to be happy. So I'm giving it to you now. Be happy, Emma. You've earned it. Richard lost sight of what matters. I won't make that mistake again. Jonathan pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. Emma, I meant what I said. I choose you. Whatever that means, whatever it costs. What if I'm not worth it? The fear she had been holding back spilled out. What if everyone's right and I'm just a distraction? What if I mess this up? Then we mess it up together. Jonathan kissed her forehead, her cheeks, finally her lips. The kiss was gentle, tender, full of promise. I'm done being afraid, Emma. Life is too short to waste it protecting walls that just keep you lonely. The next weeks were a whirlwind of change. Richard's resignation sent shockwaves through the company. Jonathan promoted someone from within to CFO, restructured the executive team, and made it clear that Sterling Enterprises was evolving. Emma transferred to the Strategic Development Department with a title and salary that reflected her actual contributions. HR created policies for workplace relationships that were transparent and fair. The gossip continued, but Emma found she cared less as she proved herself through her work. Projects she led came in under budget and ahead of schedule. Strategies she proposed increased efficiency. Slowly, grudgingly, people began to see her as competent rather than lucky. Rosa recovered steadily, the specialized care Jonathan arranged working better than anyone had hoped. When she was finally released from the hospital, Jonathan insisted on the best home health care, the best equipment, everything needed for her recovery. Emma tried to argue, but Rosa simply smiled and told her to stop fighting gifts given with love. It was 2 months after the confrontation with Richard that Jonathan took Emma to dinner at an exclusive restaurant overlooking the city. They had been dating officially for weeks, but carefully, taking time to build something real beneath the intense circumstances that had brought them together. I have something for you, Jonathan said as dessert arrived. He pulled out a small box, but when Emma's eyes widened in panic, he laughed. Not that. Not yet. But someday, if you'll let me. Emma opened the box to find a delicate bracelet, silver with a single charm. A tiny shoe. She burst out laughing. You didn't. I absolutely did. So you never forget where you started. Jonathan took the bracelet and fastened it around her wrist. The barefoot girl who walked into my life and reminded me how to feel. I was terrified that day, Emma admitted. Certain I was about to lose the one chance I had to change everything. You changed everything anyway. Just not the way either of us expected. Jonathan took her hand across the table. Emma Rodriguez, you are brave and brilliant and stubborn and real. You make me laugh. You make me think. You make me want to build something that matters beyond just success. What do you want to build? A life. With you. I know it's fast. I know people will say we're crazy. But I've wasted 4 years being careful and lonely. I don't want to waste any more time. Emma felt tears prick her eyes. I love you, she said, the words feeling both terrifying and inevitable. I didn't mean to. I tried not to. But I do. Good. Jonathan smiled, the real smile he saved only for her. Because I've loved you since you told me the universe had other plans for your shoes. I just had to wait for you to catch up. They left the restaurant hand in hand, walking through the city streets that had seemed so cold and unforgiving that first morning. Now they felt full of possibility, lit by streetlights and hope. What happens next? Emma asked as they paused at the corner where she had first entered his building. Next, you keep being brilliant. I keep trying to deserve you. We build something real together, both at work and in life. Jonathan pulled her close, kissed her under the streetlights while the city moved around them. And maybe, eventually, I convince you to marry a complicated billionaire who fell in love with a woman who refused to give up even when she lost her shoes. That sounds like a pretty good plan, Emma said, smiling against his lips. Just good? Amazing. Terrifying. Perfect. That's better. Jonathan kissed her again, and Emma felt the last of her fear dissolve. She had walked into his life barefoot and desperate, expecting judgment. Instead, she had found acceptance, respect, and love she never imagined possible. They had both been broken in different ways, both building walls to protect wounded hearts. But somehow, in the midst of crisis and connection, they had found each other. Two people learning to trust again, to hope again, to believe that sometimes the universe's other plans were better than anything they could have imagined.